There is a very small moment that happens at the end of episode 3 of Gurren Lagann. It's a blink and you miss it sort of moment, in which, while contemplating our protagonists, Liron, right after joining the team, says, "It's possible that these boys might make a change." A statement to which Yoko asks, "Change what?" And Liron simply replies, "Something." You see, friends, that moment, which to some might be a throwaway, easy to miss line, pretty much encompasses the entire premise of the show. That something is everything and nothing at the same time. And despite the outrageous, in your face kind of message that the show has delivered to its audience so far, this moment is intentionally vague. Because when you first watch this scene, you have no way of telling what that something is. It doesn't promise you a life-changing revelation. It simply invites you to discover what that something is. The show lights a spark and whispers to you in the dark, "Watch. The show might change something in you." You see, sometimes you find stories that do something special to you. They twist a part of you that had grown quiet. They find a way to breathe fire into it and slightly alter how you feel. They carry a small glowing spiral that somehow keeps turning long after the last frame fades. Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann is one of those stories, for a lot of people, myself included. At first glance, Gurren Lagann seems easy to categorize as a stereotypical mecha anime. You know, giant robots, absurd escalation, ridiculous visuals, and characters shouting their convictions over an explosive yet iconic and great soundtrack. The show is loud. It's a spectacle by design, but it is an exaggeration turned into actual subtle philosophy. Because underneath all of this exaggeration, there is a layered emotional structure that actually discusses important themes of growth, connection, loss, letting go, and the quiet yet stubborn possibility that something inside you might change. You know, something that ripples outward in unexpected ways. Something human. If you've ever heard someone say that Gurren Lagann changed them, it's actually not hyperbole, believe it or not. That transformation doesn't really come from the cheap inspiration, it comes from a clash of themes that resonate at a deep personal level. Because if you have ever had a friend who has doubted themselves of whether or not they're capable of overcoming an obstacle, if you've ever believed your closest friends can live up to their potential even when they cannot see it themselves, or even when you have gone through these feelings yourself, if you've ever found yourself down in the dumps, thinking you cannot possibly move forward, you know, defeated and sometimes even broken, if you've ever had a friend who has told you that they believed in you, then you too have at one point believed that something might change. And for some viewers, that something ends up being belief itself. For others, is the courage to step out of a self-imposed box. And for some people, it's the way they understand things such as loss, legacy, or even their place in the cycle of change. Gurren Lagann doesn't need to change your entire worldview to be relevant. Because changing something, whether it's a quiet internal notch in your confidence, your perspective, or even your willingness to try, is enough to start your own upward spiral. And that's one of the first seeds that the show plants in their viewers. The human capacity for change and growth, to evolve. Because you see, Gurren Lagann begins in a small claustrophobic setting, a literal cave. And not just physically, but also emotionally. We see a simple boy working underground, in a world in the shape of a box, enclosed by walls that are not just physical, but also metaphorical. a place where the horizon simply seems to not exist. Now, that setting is by design, because it represents something universal. You see, most people have at one point or another found themselves in places where growth seemed impossible. In a way, just like Simon, we dig our own tunnels. Sometimes because it's all we've been told to do, sometimes because it's all we've been told we can do, and sometimes because it's all we believe we're good for. A certain inability to see the sky beyond the ceiling above our own heads. And Gurren Lagann takes that small, relatable human inertia and it turns it into something transcendental. The show makes use of a spiral as the metaphor for growth, for potential. And when you think about it, it's actually the perfect imagery. Because growth isn't instantaneous, it is not linear. It winds, it turns, it gives you the feeling that sometimes it's infinite. And in a way, it manages to dig deep inside you. Every turn in this spiral is a choice to keep moving. Even when the path is uncertain, the spiral will keep pushing you forward. The show tells the audience in a clear voice, you are not something fixed. You will not stand still, for if you do, you stop turning, and therefore you stop advancing. You can evolve, you can become more than the version of yourself that is trapped in these tunnels, in this box. You can change something about how you see your own limits and then find a way to break through them. That promise is this something that the show tells us about. For anyone who has ever felt small or unseen or stuck, watching the spiral start from a tiny point and stretch outward feels like a map that actually tells you, hey, there is a way up, and you don't need to start knowing how far you can actually go. Just keep spinning the drill and you'll get to places. You'll change something. And that inspiration isn't just delivered through quiet reflection in Gurren Lagann. It's muscular, it's kinetic, it's loud, and it's in your face. Because Gurren Lagann doesn't just talk about belief, it makes belief itself a physical manifestation of force. The world itself responds to its conviction, and the walls are not obstacles, they're challenges waiting to be torn down. Limits are not boundaries, they're ceilings waiting to be burst through with that drill, with that spiral. And if you've ever seen anything related to Gurren Lagann, chances are you have heard this line from the song, "Row, row, fight the power." This sentence, it's never alone. It's always accompanied by a couple of other verses that always end up getting stuck in your head. Do the impossible, see the invisible. Touch the untouchable, break the unbreakable. In all of this, it's completely by design. The leitmotif, both musically and narratively, says that power comes from refusing to accept that one ceiling above you. The show wraps that refusal in adrenaline, and the soundtrack, the escalating stakes, the defiant speeches, the visuals of drills piercing virtually everything in their path, everything is by design. And it's that noisy, enthusiastic insistence on going beyond that activates this sort of primal instinct in those who watch it. The show forces you to stop watching with a passive eye, and you actually start feeling like you can move in your own life. You start feeling that something, that drill starts turning somehow. And it's because Gurren Lagann, it's not subtle. And that's exactly why it works. The show channels the internal voice that says, hey, maybe I can't. And it drowns it out with, fuck you, yes you can. All in bold capital letters. But in the same way, the show makes a point in telling us that the spiral doesn't turn alone. You see, growth in Gurren Lagann, it's social, it's relational. It's born from the interplay between those who lift and those who are lifted. which helps each other to reach places never thought of before. And this is where one of the show's most emotionally rich elements live. The idea that even when you can't believe in yourself, there is always someone else who believes in you. And here enters Kamina. He says, as a character, in essence, I believe in you so hard that you're gonna have to start believing in yourself. And in a way, Kamina represents the phrase, fake it till you make it, not as an empty posture, but as a revolutionary performance. Kamina has no power, he has no pedigree. He actually forges his identity through sheer audacity and charisma. He declares himself a leader, he names the crew, and he defiantly claims or asks every single enemy that they face, who the hell do you think I am? He does all of these things way before he can even back them up. Yet his performative belief ends up creating reality. Think about it. It ignites Simon's spiral potential. It rallies the allies around them. And it manifests the very legend that he actively proclaims. Kamina is the starting point. He doesn't wait for the fire to ignite. He becomes the spark that forces possibility into existence. And he embodies the series' core philosophy. Believe in the you that believes in yourself. But in the same way, Kamina is actually a paradox. Because his brilliance lies in this. Kamina is both undeniably vital and fundamentally unsustainable. You see, he leads without real skill. He inspires without any proof. And he fights with bravado that far exceeds his strength. Yet this walking contradiction fuels the impact that he has on everyone around him. His projected persona, the faking it, becomes his truth because it reshapes the world around him. And in his ultimate sacrifice, the paradox resolves. The man who faked being unbreakable dies proving that he actually was the hero he claimed to be, all through sheer self-belief. He actively cements his legend, not through longevity, but through the irreversible fire he actually ignited. Kamina is the mask that ended up fusing with the person who wore it. A walking, shouting paradox that proves that conviction, however performative, can drill through the heavens. But sadly, real growth occurs when those who were once carried learn to carry themselves. And that is the emotionally complex truth about every sort of influence, mentorship, and even love. The people who lift us up are not always the ones who stay. Because to grow fully, we eventually have to take the torch that they lit, and we need to keep going. Sometimes even without them guiding our path. It's painful, it's necessary, and it's deeply human. So when Gurren Lagann shows the evolution of its characters, it's not just about them becoming stronger. It's about them internalizing the belief that was once externally given by others, carrying it forward, and making the next turn of the spiral their own, the passing that inherited hope, the legacy in motion. And that's one of the harder things the show asks you to accept and sit with, the fact that growth often comes with loss. The spiral is not a clean climb upward. It involves shedding, releasing, and learning to live with absence. The more you rise, the more you might leave behind. You know, versions of yourself, relationships that help you get there, and comforts that no longer fit. Gurren Lagann doesn't gloss over that. It doesn't trade emotional complexity for cheap uplift. Instead, it pairs the most euphoric moments with the weight of what has been given up to get there. That makes the positive hits feel earned. And it gives the audience the space to feel this contradiction. To be inspired while also mourning. To feel invincible while sometimes quietly feeling destroyed. There's a human cycle woven through that tension. We are formed in connection, pushed by belief, and tested by loss, all to end up being reshaped by our own resolve. Letting go isn't the end of the spiral, it's just the start of the next turn. And learning to release without forgetting, to carry what mattered without being weighted down, is one of the show's quiet lessons. It's a sort of emotional alchemy that turns pain into fuel for the future. And at a thematic scale, Gurren Lagann also frames a philosophical conflict between two thoughts: hope that chooses motion, and fear that chooses stagnation. Well, fear tells you that you should stay safe, stay small, and that you shouldn't risk the climb because, consequences might be painful. Hope resonates within you and yells at you, saying, hey, climb anyways. Because in the refusal to accept your own limit, you find what makes life worth living. Because this spiral, this hope, represents defiance in a way. The show says it itself. The spiral is the potential to evolve, and to evolve through the spiral is to move, and to move is to push against this inertia of comfort, but in the same time you risk loss. But you have to choose growth over safety, right? Watching the show, in a sense, is watching that inner battle projected outward. With every impossible breakthrough, there is an affirmation that the hopeful part of you can gain ground. The series doesn't pretend that fear is not real. Not at all. It just refuses to let it be the final thing. So why does Gurren Lagann sticks with you? Let's just summarize the key points of this emotional equation that Gurren Lagann poses. You got the personal desire to change and grow, sparked by the belief that it's actually possible. The external energy of conviction that is turned into spectacle, making internal yearning feel alive in a way. The relational truth that we are empowered by others and eventually carry that power forward ourselves, along with the paradox of influence, where the source of belief doesn't really stay there forever, and it forces painful but necessary independence. On top of that, there is the cost of any real ascent, carrying loss, and the necessity of letting go in order to keep spiraling upwards. The ideological choices to rise despite fear, to keep moving when stagnation seems the safest option. And finally, that something might change. A small internal shift that multiplies outward. When you put all of those together, it's actually quite easy to see why someone would feel roused, seen, and even broken open by Gurren Lagann. Because inspiration without cost would feel hollow. Pain without purpose would feel crushing. And the series exists in the tension between the two concepts. And it's that tension, raw, honest, and beautiful, that actively lingers. When you finish watching the show, you walk away not just rooting for giant mechs or internalizing catchphrase. You walk away with a small personal spiral inside. Recalibrated sense of possibility, a renewed willingness to just try, a quiet reminder of those who believed in you, and the courage to let go and keep moving when things get heavy. Gurren Lagann doesn't give you answers. It doesn't say, hey, do this and your life will change. It actually hands you a symbol. a small drill that keeps turning inside you, that refuses to accept ceilings and that combines with others to become something larger, but only if you keep it turning. It tells you that you might as well change something. And that something is the real gift. It's not always visible. It might even be subtle. You know, a decision, a conversation, a moment of letting go that no longer hurts the same way that it did. But it's always there. It's spiraling upwards. So if someone tells you that Gurren Lagann inspired them and that shook them at the same time, don't shrug it off as just enthusiasm for a flashy animation. What they're describing is an experience of being invited into their own becoming, a call to look up from the tunnel and to see the sky up above. Gurren Lagann is a story that doesn't just want to entertain, it wants to change something in you, in how you see your limits, in what you are willing to do the next turn of your own spiral. So if you're watching it for the first time, listen for the quiet promise in that throwaway line. It's possible these boys might make a change. The real version of that should be, it's possible that you might make a change. And maybe that's enough, because sometimes changing something becomes the first turn in changing everything. Friends, thank you so much for watching my video. This show means a lot to me. If you have watched it, let me know down in the comments below. How do you feel about it? Do you agree with my take? And if you haven't, please do yourself a favor and go check it out. Thank you guys for watching, and remember to subscribe. See you in the next one.